What is going on, everybody? Hello. Welcome back to the channel. I am here with the one, the only Tales from the Crypt Mancer. Man, it is long overdue for us to have a proper catch up. I feel like the last one we did was the one we did in person when I was in Chicago. And that was like what, back in June, maybe? So it's been
Since July, yeah.
Yeah, it's been a minute. How have you been, man?
I have been well, yeah. Thanks for asking, and it's good to be able to hang out here as this hurricane barrels our way towards Florida. But yeah, I thought it was good. Yeah, it's definitely be a nice opportunity to catch up, talk Web3, talk Splinterlands, and just talk about stacking stats because I think now's the time, right? It's
Absolutely.
Who knows when the markets are going to change, or when it changes, it could be very fast. And what you do now, I think, is, when I say you, I mean we, us, you, I, whoever. What we do now is important, right? You want to be planning and preparing, and because things get crazy pretty quick.
Yeah. So, guys, if you're just tuning in or watching the replay, make sure you check the description below. I have both Tales' X as well as YouTube, so make sure you go check it out and support him. I was thinking, well, so okay, to your point, and I'm pulling this up in the background right now. I remember when we were like an early raging bull market, 2025, and I went back and started looking at like, man, some of these projects that popped off, how are they doing in like September, October, like before I really got locked into the bull run? Because it wasn't until we hit new all-time high in December of 2020. Like, I was vaguely following when Michael Saylor was going crazy about MicroStrategy in August, and then I just had like a bunch of life stuff that hit me between then and like November. And I was looking back and I'm like, okay, all these projects, BNB, Aave, like there's so many projects that were like on the cusp and we're not doing anything. And then they just absolutely shot up as soon as we hit 2025. And I don't know if that's what you're getting at right now, but it does feel like there's a ton of projects, a ton of like really exciting things happening in the space where they're quiet now, or like they're bubbling and they're going to pop off at some point in the next, I don't know, we'll call it like 3 to 6 months if we follow that same kind of trajectory as 2021.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, again, who knows when that will happen or if it will happen. I mean, I think we assume, since we're in this space, that we think it will happen again as far as an alt, coin season, or at least a bull market for Bitcoin and crypto in general. But, how you spend the time now, I think, is very important, because I think it's really, who knows, again, how long this bear market or this sideways slop is going to last. But at some point, things will change. And it may not be necessarily where you invest capital now, but it may be about just where you invest your time now that matters, especially if you don't have capital to invest now, because many people have been hurt by this bull run and may not have liquid funds, and the economy's not great in the US and all these other things that are happening. So it's not always about what you do with dry powder or how you reinvest existing assets. It's about what you do with your time that you have now, and how you spend it could be very impactful in this upcoming, hopefully, change in the market.
Yeah, well, speaking of which, I mean, I think this is a perfect segue into what we were talking about literally right before we hit play or stream on this. And you've had a lot of success with the play to airdrop campaigns from a lot of different projects so far. I don't know if you want to dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, I think we could definitely talk about it. I think it's generally good to be aware of what's happening in the Web3 space. Outside of Splinterlands, I know we talk, a lot about Splinterlands, and I know your channel focuses heavily on Splinterlands.
Too much. We focus too much on Splinterlands here.
Well, I mean,
I'll admit that right off the bat.
It's a good community, right? So that's why we're here. But if you also pay attention to what else is going on around Splinterlands and in Web3, I mean, there's a lot of opportunity, and I mentioned this, I think off stream. I mean, just in the last few months, I talk a lot on my channel about stacking stats, and a lot of that's just about putting your time and attention to, I guess, use Dwayne's phrase, is putting it in the right places. And I don't want to get into specifics necessarily, but I can say that with some of these games out there, like Illuvium that I've been talking about in my channel, like Metalcore, like Parallel, and these other games, some of these games are dropping play to airdrop campaigns, dropping thousands of dollars.
That's crazy.
Literally thousands that you can obtain for free in many cases in these projects. Now, certainly there's a lot of them that you have to, kind of be a little skeptical on,
Hmm.
There's a lot of projects that are play to airdrop right now. And what happens in a lot of cases, they drop the airdrop and people dump the tokens and they cash out and they just move on to the next thing, which, there's a lot of airdrop farmers out there, which is fine. Just be aware of,
Yeah.
again, investigate and kind of do research on the projects that are interesting to you from a game perspective and a team perspective. Because I think one of the most important things in this Web3 space right now is really understanding the team behind the project. Making sure it's not anonymous, making sure you understand what their background is, where they come from, what their vision is, what their roadmap is, what the funding is. These are all important things before you spend time on a player airdrop campaign. If you're looking to,
Yeah.
be longer term invested, from a time perspective or an NFT or an asset perspective in a project. If you're just farming airdrops, you can just farm the airdrops, cash out, and take your money and run. But honestly, there's enough of those projects where you could spend 24 hours a day, 365 days a year right now doing that. But I think a better use of most people's time, because we all have like jobs and families and real lives, is to spend what time you do have in Web3 on
Lost you there for a second. You still around?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there you are. Hello?
Oh, yep. Sorry.
No, yeah,
drop there.
Yeah, you cut out right at the end. But no, I agree with you, man. I'm curious. So I pulled up the top gaming tokens here. Is there any project that you want to call out or share, or is it just a wide variety of things?
Well, I mean, I can share, and it's probably not a surprise if you watch my X or my Twitter, and listen to some of my videos and stuff. I mean, the projects that I've been investigating here in the current last few months have been, certainly Illuvium, Parallel, Metalcore, probably in my top 3 that I've been looking into. Now, all of those projects are flawed in some way, right? There's no perfect project out there, but you have to, I guess, do the research and see which projects you're comfortable taking risks on and understanding where they have blind spots or where they have, work to be done. Now, all of those projects, like I said, have, certain things that are probably, fixable or challenging areas of upcoming, stuff to work on. But if you look across all of these coins that you have up here, all these projects have question marks, right? There's no perfect project out there. There's a lot of work being done on the Ronin chain, right? As far as what's, the old Axie chain and what's going on with Ronin. I mean, there's stuff out there like Cornucopias and Wilder World and Off the Grid, and I mean, the list goes on. You've got what else? You've got Raven Quest. There's tons of stuff out there. There's literally, and we've been talking about this, in our conversations at Eversound for ages. The biggest challenge for Splinterlands in a raging bull market is just the attention for clicks, users, and funds, because all these projects are here. When in 2021, you could count the number of projects that had actually viable games to play probably on one hand.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of these projects were just getting funded and started. And
they were all just promises at the time. Yeah. And it was difficult to tell what was real versus what wasn't. Because like Axie Infinity was probably the only one, but Illuvium was selling like ships and like not ships. Star Atlas was like selling ships, and Illuvium was selling assets. Yeah, but you get my point, right? But there was nothing nothing to it yet. You couldn't really do anything with it.
Yeah, and all these, I mean, a lot of these games have either closed betas, public betas, play to airdrop campaigns. They've had basically had 3 years to cook and make a game. And in many cases they have, or at least, got started on the game and have something that they can show for their efforts. So now you're seeing a lot of talk about TGEs and, token events and stuff like that that are coming up. And it's a little bit of a shift in mentality, because before, what we saw in 2021 is everyone launched their token before they had a game, basically to kind of like fund the game and like a pre-sale type of mentality. Now what we're seeing is a lot of cases, the market's saying, hey, we're not falling for that nonsense anymore. If you want to do a token generation event or launch a token, you better have something to show for it first, like real product before you launch. And that's where you have games like Off the Grid and stuff launching, and they're doing lots of things, on PlayStation, on Xbox, and really has the potential to be a bridge project for Web3 gaming.
Have you tried Off the Grid by any chance?
I have, but it was like basically a 5-minute test because my gaming PC wouldn't run it. The frame drops were made it unplayable. But from a first-person shooter perspective, from what I was able to see, even though it wasn't really playable for me in PvP, it looked like a similar to Call of Duty's quality game from a first-person shooter perspective. So I think that's that kind of Web2 approach with that kind of quality game with the ability to earn NFTs, like I said, could be a very large catalyst for people to give Web3 and crypto a shot, because they come to play the game, not for the crypto. And once they realize that, hey, I can keep these assets, I can sell them, I can trade them, they're my assets. If I want to use them, it's not a mandatory part of the game. It's just kind of in the game. And I think a lot of people will start to say, hey, this is not required for me, but it's here. And they're going to, I think, realize the value that provides to them longer term. And then they'll start to kind of go down that rabbit hole that we all went down, right? And then they start to have their eyes, kind of opened, and then it starts to really get interesting. And if you can have a game that is, let's just say it's Off the Grid or whatever game that happens to be in the future, because there will be a game that does it, when they can bring in literally, let's say, hundreds of thousands of Web2 gamers and get them exposed to the idea of NFTs and Web3 projects, where it's not, just the first talking point is this is a scam and a rug pull and this is bad and all this stuff. If you can actually get them to use it organically and start to convert the hearts and minds of other people to say, hey, this is really not a bad thing, right? Then all of a sudden, those players start going, well, if Off the Grid can do this, whatever game it happens to be, what other games are out there that I might want to be interested in looking at? And then it starts to be this, spiraling effect that it starts spreading to other projects, right? That interest. And, the projects that we have in Web3 right now, some of the larger projects are really only impacting like 10 or 20,000 at most players on a best case scenario. So the marketable Web3 audience is limited from an impact and perspective. You break that and get to the more traditional gamers and kind of break that barrier of entry between fiat and NFT gaming and stuff like that. This is when I think the game changes and it's off to the races at that point.
Well, yeah, I mean, to your point, it only takes one, right? Because once people see the proof of concept there, then they're going to start looking for different games that are more along the lines of like what they are. I always go back to, what's that game? Fortnite, for example, right? Because to me, maybe Off the Grid is this game, maybe it's not, but all it takes is like one collaboration with one influencer or one company or something like that could potentially bring in a bunch of people to check out whatever it is. And then when you show them like, hey, this cosmetic or this skin or this NFT actually has value, and if you want to sell it, you can, right? There's this like, I don't know, like light bulb moment, like light switch moment that I think will click for a lot of Web2 gamers the same way that it did for many of us in 2021. It's just the games weren't quite there yet, and we were all like crypto degen enough to look at something like Axie or look at something like Splinterlands and be like, oh yeah, this makes sense. Like they're not doing it perfectly, but it makes sense, and this space is the future. Now you have AAA style games, AAA quality games out there that can draw people in with the gameplay. And then as soon as they get something where it's like, oh, like this is a limited edition skin and like we're never going to print it again, and here's like how the blockchain works and how you can see your specific one on the blockchain. I mean, I think people will lose their minds because like, again, I always go back to this story of, these kids that I would play Fortnite with, they grind for some skin, right? That was only available in like a certain season. And you had to hit like level 100 for it. And then 3 seasons later, it's available in the store and they're just crying on stream with me because they're like, it's not fair. Like now they can buy it for $8. That's not cool. So,
well, and here's the thing. I want to provide like real world context to how this is actually happening in real time as we speak and what it's doing. So we talk about the adoption of Web2 gamers, and there's a game that actually is doing that fairly well, and that is Parallel. And what they're doing is they're really making I think, solid inroads with the Hearthstone community. They've
Hmm.
been able to bring over a lot of ambassadors and
They have, yeah.
Hearthstone tournament players into the game and ecosystem, and they've gone out and talked to their Twitch viewers and fans, and brought them in to look at the game. And there's been a lot of consternation, a lot of I would say resistance to that in some ways
Hmm.
as well, which you would expect to see some friction. But here's the good news: is a lot of those influencers are multiplying by the day as people get more involved in parallel, and they just had like I think over the weekend they had a $50,000 major tournament for esports that was broadcast on Twitch and
Yep.
cast, and it was really a big deal. And that esports scene is really popping off in parallel, and it's growing, and it's again capturing Hearthstone players, capturing other TCG players in the kind of ecosystem. And one of the things they did, it was nice about that. There's 128 players that qualified for that majors event this weekend. And what they did is they created a special edition 128 minted, like a Skinner variant of a card that the winner of the tournament picked. And if you participate in the tournament, you got one of those one of 128 cards or NFTs. It's the same card as
That's pretty cool.
whatever else, but it's a different like skin variation of it. And there's only 128 of them ever, right? So
See,
they're
yeah.
pushing this kind of content out there on top of the stuff they're doing daily in the game, like with the quests and the free cards you can get from the store every day when you log into the game. It creates that stickiness in the game. So you want to go into parallel. You want to get your free card every day. You want to play the battle pass.
Yeah.
You want to get your, quest done. So you get your free packs and you get all this stuff and your skins and your Paragon. So it keeps getting you back into the game. And while you're limited from an earning perspective to 5 battles a day to earn, there's incentives within the game's loops and mechanics that encourages you to play more, to rank up higher, to get eligible for these tournaments, free
Yeah,
rolls
yeah.
and stuff like that.
Is that how you get eligible if you just finish in like a decent spot in the rankings?
Yeah, finishing a certain part in the rankings will open you up to entry in certain tournaments, to qualify and do other tournaments. They're really, and I'm not a tournament expert within Parallel. Like I haven't gotten really super into the scene because I'm still just trying to build up my soulbound deck in Parallel to be able to compete at some of these higher levels. And it's serious. I mean, you really need to spend the time studying the metas and stuff.
There's a lot of people that I see on X and follow on X that are really into it, right? I mean, they know all the different decks, they know all the different metas. They're out there deck building in public, right, and helping people on board and figure out like what to work with. Like I learned about the Lemmy deck, and again, this was like 9 months ago at this point, but I learned about it through X and like people actually going through and listing out, hey, what are the best decks for each of the different parallels, right? So
yeah, I mean it's crazy. Like I mean, you've got these brilliant minds playing Splinterlands. There's a lot of really good players in Splinterlands that, like I said, are just brilliant. And you can see some of these scholars that are just amazing at the game of Splinterlands, and a lot of these top players in Splinterlands. I just am wondering what they could do in parallel if they spent the time getting into meta. Because like this weekend, I think if you finished, I don't know, like in 12th or 16th place in that tournament, you still got like I think $2,000 or $1,800 or something. So, I mean, it's and I think the winner got, I mean, esport it's seriously esports. Like it's stuff that we dreamed of Splinterlands having at one point, and it just never happened. And I don't think it can happen in the way the game currently works. But this is the reality, and it's only a matter of time, before again, if this continues with what they're doing over there and in other games too, not just Parallel, but it's really going to be, there's going to be significant earning opportunities for those players that don't just necessarily want to earn on a daily ranked basis or through NFT appreciation, but just playing a game and having fun, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the biggest part of it too. The buy-in for Parallel is significantly lower. And now actually we should talk about the bond stuff too, where people can just go in and they can build a deck based on like all the different soulbound cards that they get, try to rank up, play for ranking, and then at the end of the day you got some cash that you're walking away with. You didn't throw in this huge heavy investment, and just the rewards that you earn are enough. And with Prime going up a little bit, I mean, it's not anywhere near its all-time high, but It's like 2x from where it was at the recent lows of like $5. I think it's like $10 or something right now. So I don't know. To me, that just creates a much more casual relationship with the game. Yet what I end up seeing is many people who are like diehard players that want to play ranked and play multiple, like when I say multiple, like many more than 5 games per day, because they're just trying to be the best at the game. So they're no longer getting paid, but they're playing because they love the game. And that to me is probably one of the most bullish things that I've seen in play to earn crypto gaming, because that's people just loving a game for the game itself and trying to rank up. And maybe there's the added incentive of like getting into tournaments, which does have a financial component, but that's not guaranteed on a day-to-day basis, and that's not like ROI based, right? It's just, no, I'm just playing because I want to get to the highest levels.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think it's important that your game is engaging. And like when I had that recent talk with Dwayne, I mentioned in my conversation with Dwayne is, regardless of the game in Web3, right? If your game's going to be successful, the game has to be entertaining and it has to have value, standalone value as a game by itself, to have sustainability, right? And take the NFTs and the Web3 part out of the equation entirely. Otherwise, what do you have really if you don't have that? And I will say that one of the things Parallel is doing, which I think is interesting, is they're really messing heavily in the lore. They have a whole comics and they have a physical card game or cards that they distribute and produce as well. They're producing basically, I don't know if I call them statues or collectible figurines and stuff using their lore. So they're hitting it on all areas. They're trying to build an engaging game. They're branching off and doing other games in the universe. They're really focusing on the lore. And this is what you want to see in a project. Right? You want to put your bets, if you're going to bet on stuff in Web3, you want to put your money or your assets or your time in projects that are doing the right things, right? Showing the right vision, putting the right roadmap in place. And at least for me, that's what I want to do, is I want to find those projects that are, whether it's off the grid, whether it's parallel, whatever it is, right? Pick your project that you like, make sure you're doing the research and you're finding those that you are comfortable, putting, basically making them your horses for the next run.
Yeah, well, I've read several interviews or come across several interviews with Kalos, the founder of Parallel, and what you mentioned lore, and the thing is, they're not just like knocking it out of the park. But the lore is everything, because what he always defines this as is, like, he says Parallel is a story, right? Parallel is a story, and every game that exists within like the Parallel universe is just covering like a piece of that story, right? So obviously the TCG is kind of going through the story bit by bit, but then they're going to have Colony, which is going to be focused on one small aspect within the universe. Then they have what's that, Tau Ceti coming out next year, the third person shooter. That's going to be another aspect of that. So I mean, to me, that's just cool. And I'm biased because I like anything sci-fi related. So I immediately fell in love with the story of the 5 different parallels that were, all kind of like different permutations of the human race coming through time. Mm-hmm. But to your point, like it's not hey, this is a cool idea, let's just adapt like this thing now as we go along. It's like they had the story set out from the beginning, and now they're just building all the pieces. And to me, that's a really cool way to do it.
Yeah, I think so. I think you need. I mean, a lot of this Web3 stuff changes so fast, right? I mean, you have to be able to pivot. You have to be able to be agile, and you have to be able to adapt. And I think that's one thing that I would say Splinterlands, unfortunately, has not been able to do well, right? Historically, and we've talked about this as well. And Splinterlands is just one of those projects, but there's definitely other projects out there that have suffered the same type of challenges. Is if you can't pivot, if you can't change based on the market conditions or what your community or your gamers are telling you, that's not good in the current environment. You need to be able to adjust and change directions, especially if something's not working. And you need to be able to deliver changes to your development code in your game in a timely fashion, right? And keep your players engaged, keep that stickiness, keep them coming back for more, keep them wanting to buy more or engage more or play more. And, again, these are the signs of a project that's going to thrive and do well when, all the lights turn green, and you can cruise through to success, where you have other products that can't do that, and they're going to be challenged. I think when the lights do turn green, they're going to be kind of stuck in neutral there.
Yeah, agreed. Hold on, let's take a moment just to acknowledge the chat here, and then we can go from there. So Onk12 in the house, what's going on? Got this YouTube notification. Tails in the house, indeed. Tails bringing some awesome alpha today. All right, so the Chuny says the real test for any Web3 game is if they can resist inflating tokens. That is what got SPL, in my opinion, back the game with Bitcoin. Agrees with that. Chuny says the change. Oh, here, this will be a good one to get your opinion on, Tails. The changes to the Crypt Mancer proposal looks like silent quitting, handing the running of the game off to the DAO, which will be difficult to make happen, in my opinion. Management by proposal. Do you agree with that?
Well, I haven't reviewed the changes to the pre-proposal for the Crypt Mancer funding, so I can't really speak to all of those details. What I can say about that whole thing.
Let's just take a step back then. How are you feeling about the whole thing? Yeah, I was gonna say, just in general then.
It feels bad, honestly. And I've talked about it before. I mean, the two aspects that feel bad. One is it feels bad to see the game on life support. And I had mentioned this, I think, in my comments to some of your videos, and I talked about with the community, I've talked about it on X, is, we had this kind of surge over the latter part of summer where everyone was, feeling positive about Splinterlands and the direction it was going, and SPS was going up, and AzerCon was, pumping the Hive story and stuff like that and all this other stuff. And, coming out of that town hall, with Matt, I felt the opposite. And I mentioned this on my conversation with Dwayne recently as well. Is like, look, these are a lot of warning signs to me that the company is not healthy. They're asking Hive for money. They're asking the DAO for money, for JPTR, right? For the DAO, for the nodes. It's only a matter of time before they start asking for more money, until there's no money left, right? There's only a certain amount of stable coins and non-SPS or DEC funds in the DAO. And that is rapidly deteriorating. People, look at the DAO Treasury report and say, oh, there's, multiple millions here. Yeah, but all that, like 80% of that or more is in SPS and DEC, which the DAO cannot sell SPS and DEC to fund these things in most cases for outside parties, because it
would tank the token.
Yeah, tanking the token. So you have a limited amount of these external funds in ETH and Bitcoin and USDC that you can pay for these things. And realistically, that's all going to be gone probably in the next 6 months. It'll be pilfered and gone. And then what do you at that point? That feels bad, because the fact of the matter is, what I heard on the down hall, with Clay, thanks for Clay for hosting that and getting us some clarity there, is that they're running at a deficit of roughly $100,000 to $150,000 a month, basically, with no real strategic plans other than a next pack sale to try and right the ship and get to a revenue neutral kind of inflow outflow situation. What that tells me is, because they haven't really sold anything and the sales are low and what have you, and the development is still lagging, is that the window, the runway for this company to I guess what do you say, crap or get off the seat here, is they got like 6 months basically, right, to figure it out, either to get revenue in a new card set, paying the bills, keeping the lights on, or they're going to have to go out and sell equity or get investor funding to keep the game going. And that's scary. I mean, that's just downright scary, because there's no guarantee that in 6 months we're going to have a resurgence in crypto. Hopefully we do, right? But at the same time, if crypto dips, like if Bitcoin's at 60K today and it dips and goes to 40K, that runway of 6 months, because Matt said, most of their stuff is in Bitcoin. Well, now you've lost 1/3 of your runway because Bitcoin tanked, right? So that's very scary for a project that, we're all heavily, I think either emotionally or dollar-wise or whatever, time invested in. Yeah. So that's scary for one. Now, two, again, the whole idea of basically using the DAO as like this piggy bank or savings bank to always go to get bailed out. Really what should have happened, in my opinion, is with the Hive proposal, instead of buying all this Hive, which is you want to talk about albatross over in Splinterlands? That's an albatross around our neck, having all this Hive that we now got stuck with. Because it's not like Hive is necessarily going to do great things. So now we're stuck with Hive. What should have really happened is the DAO should, instead of buying Hive, just give a loan to Splinterlands, sub-rate loan, 1% or, some really juicy, attractive deal. And so Splinterlands, here's, $500,000, right, from the DAO. You can have it for 3 years. We'll charge you 1% interest and you'll pay it back to us, right?
Yeah.
Rather than buy all this Hive, which we don't even get guaranteed funding of $500,000 from Hive with all this Hive that we bought. So I would just, if we're going to use the DAO as a subsidy or a bailout, like a government type of funding for the company, just use it as that, and just, either Splinterlands succeeds or it doesn't. And if it doesn't succeed, you can't pay anything back anyways, because there's nothing to pay back. So you might as well just, right now we're just giving money for them to pay Crypt Mancer to do whatever. And there's no way to get that back ever. But it's still the DAO paying for it. Might as well just have Splinterlands companies say, hey, DAO, we're going to take this money. If things go well, we'll be able to pay you back. If things don't, well, there's no game, so it doesn't matter. Rather than us just chucking money over there and crossing our fingers and hoping it works out. So
yeah, the Hive was an interesting one. So here's the thing: from a purely logical financial perspective, you're absolutely right. Like, yes, sure, does Hive potentially have more upside than ETH? Yeah, maybe, but do you really want to like bank that much, like from a US dollar standpoint, on Hive going up versus ETH? I mean, ETH would probably be the safer play in the long run. And then the second part of that is it's just there's such a huge unstaking time. I think it's like 13 weeks to unstake for Hive. My thought behind that was it's a longer term play here, and so it's not just 500K worth. My guess is that I can imagine Splinterlands, the company, going to the Hive DAO for other things in the future. And so this is more so like an investment to the ecosystem to say, hey, if this first 500K gets put and we bring in, I don't know, 1,000 players, 2,000 players, at least they can look to that and say, hey, there's 1,000 new people on Hive or 2,000 new people on Hive checking out the game and the blockchain. We want to run something similar again. Like, will you fund us? And there might be a better chance. Again, it's a long-term play, but
you have much more faith in the Hive community than I do. But,
I mean, the Hive community is already calling BS now, right? So I'm just saying this from the mindset of what I think Clay was trying to do in terms of like building a bridge there, which sadly, I was one of the proponents that we should get off of the Hive blockchain for several reasons. But if Matt's committed there,
that.
Yeah, well, okay, go ahead. What are your thoughts?
Finish your thoughts and let's talk about that.
Well, I was one of the proponents for us to get off the Hive blockchain, just because that's not where growth is. That's not where hype and innovation, all this stuff is happening. The moment that Matt just said that wasn't really in the picture, to me, all of a sudden, I basically dropped my case for it, because it's like, if he's not willing to move, right? If he's not willing to move, then it's a waste of time for us. But that's just a broader point there. What about you?
Well, my feeling is Splinterlands has already proven that they can bridge assets, NFTs, and, in some ways tokens as well, but mostly assets to other chains. They've done it with Wax, right? They've done it with Ethereum, with Rooney. So this is doable technically, right? And these were not necessarily big lifts in the history of Splinterlands to get those things done. So the ability for Splinterlands to technically bridge to a chain that may give them grant money if they just spend the time to look into it, like Base, like Arbitrum, like Immutable X as an example, maybe Avalanche, maybe Ronin. These are all chains that have a number of players already in those ecosystems with assets and funds on those chains that might be interested in playing Splinterlands if they could easily play Splinterlands. Because let's face it, getting SPS in the US to buy SPS tokens, is not easy, especially for a new player or someone that wants to come into the ecosystem. It's not easy to get as a whale. Yep. Certainly, if you want to get 100,000 US or more into Splinterlands ecosystem, good luck with that, right? Without totally effing yourself. So basically, the ability for us to branch out and hit these other chains, not necessarily, just bridge the assets. So have the assets buyable, have a market on there, have it be able to be played off that chain and, be able to work compatible with that would add tremendous reach. And I would argue much more reach than anything that they're doing for this nebulous new player experience that no one can tell me what exactly it entails or what it exists or what it is. We spent 9 months on this new player experience, which is honestly a joke, which I go back to the whole delivery and communication of the team not doing well. But, if you're going to do something to attract new players, you got to do something innovative, and I think bridging assets and making it available to other players that would be outside the current ecosystem would be a great way to do that. And let's just talk about new player experience for a minute here in this whole marketing, this $500,000 in marketing budget. And let me tell you my thoughts on this. And I'm not going to pull any punches. I don't after sound, but this is just a joke. It's a bad strategic decision. It's a bad waste of resources and time for Splinterlands. I don't think it's going to bear any fruit. And I think it's going to be possibly another fatal mistake being made by a team that can't afford to make fatal mistakes. You have limited runway, you have limited budget, you have limited developers, you have limited time, and you're spending it on stuff that's really not impactful or meaningful in the grand scheme of things. And I was just going to do a video on this. I'll share some of that content here with you on your stream. But, here's an example. Illuvium, in the last 2 months, we talked about play to airdrop campaigns, right? They dropped 60,000 ILV tokens for marketing and new player acquisition as part of their play to airdrop campaign. 60,000 ILV tokens in monetary dollars is roughly 2.4 million, somewhere between 2.2 to 2.4 million, depending on the price of ILV at any given day. That they gave away for free in the last 2 months to players of the game, right? 2.4 million. Splinterlands is coming in with a budget of 500,000, and they have to pay a salary of somebody to execute the plan. So the actual dollars and cents to actually do something in that budget is probably half that.
No, it's nothing. I mean,
200,000, 300,000 at max, right? What is Splinterlands going to be able to do with that amount of money when Illuvium just gave $2.4 million and still only has maybe 10 to 20,000 at best players in the ecosystem after giving that money away? They came back and said, hey, we got to halt this. We're just blowing money for no reason because it's not the right time. We have some stuff to do in the game. We have stuff to do in crypto. And we're going to revisit this because now's not the time to market. And they basically put on hold that campaign until I think November now, until they get some other things in the game that they wanted functionally in esports and other things. But again, look, they spent 2.4 million and they did not get value out of it. And Splinterlands is not going to get jack diddly squat from their marketing investment that they're trying to put with the current product that they have, and they're spending all this money and time on something that doesn't matter. Illuvium has a cinematic trailer, a full tutorial and everything. No one cares, right? So again, things like bridging, things like getting the ecosystem in a better spot. Look, I figured out how to play Axie, right? Why did I figure out how to play Axie? Because people were making a lot of money with a 3 Axie team that cost $1,000 to buy at the time. And why did people figure it out? Because it was worth their time to figure it out. And that's what's going to get people interested in Splinterlands, right? Is a token price at 10 cents. Yeah, people come and play Splinterlands and look at it because now every time I play a game, I'm making $3 a game, right? Yeah. So now it's interesting. Now I want to investigate this. Now I want to rent something. Now I want to buy something. Tell me more, right?
So what you're saying is that the team should take 500K and buy SPS with it. That's really the takeaway. I'm not going to move them more.
What they really, well, you have to watch my video. Okay, you have to watch my video on how the team can best get Splinterlands.
Guys, make sure you check out Tails' content. There's a link in the description below to his YouTube channel. So I want to push back on this for a second just to play devil's advocate. So I agree with you that new player experience has been highly disappointing. Now, at the same time, you can't deny that the website does look significantly better in many ways for new players. The argument that I'll agree with you on is, should this have taken 9 months and a ton of resources? Probably not. Should they have focused elsewhere? Probably. But my question to you is, what should 2024 have looked like in your opinion? And again, let's say you were CEO. Let's say you were in the driver's seat. What would you have done?
Man, I'm not gonna have to create a video because I'm gonna spill all the beans.
Oh no, you're spilling all the. Okay. We can save some.
I'll just very simply. You need to fix the errors of the past. and you need to get the ecosystem humming again and the flywheel in motion. That solves all problems for Splinterlands, realistically, right? And they haven't done that. They haven't focused on the overhangs of cards. They haven't focused on the overhangs of DEC. They haven't focused on the overhangs of SPS, liquid SPS, and selling of SPS. To some of the SPS they have addressed, right? Some of it, but they could do so much more. And what I will say is, had they focused on the things that matter.
How would they address the card thing?
Man, I'll tell you real quickly on this, and we'll go into more detail in my video. But basically, card sinks and burns.
Okay.
We talk about, I leave these comments in your videos all the time after sound. You know this. I sound like a broken record.
They should have run.
You need to increase utility within the game, and you need to burn and sink cards, and you need to put mechanisms in place that players want to burn and sink cards. People don't want to stake DEC on land because it adds no value. They'd rather use that money elsewhere in Splinterlands or elsewhere in Web3, because putting $50 in DEC on a plot of land doesn't equal any type of value in game or monetary value for that money. So it's just not smart, right? It's not positive EV. So what you have to do is you have to use your game and create a compelling loop within the game, whether it's things like benefits in the game for gameplay benefits, whether it's skins, whatever you do. Again, going back to the whole, it needs to be entertaining and fun, and you need to have players engaged, right? These are things which are not rocket science, right? They're not brain surgery, right? I'm going to publish this video. You're going to see it. Hopefully it makes sense. But these are things that can be done with little development time. And it's, like I said, it's not going to take some guru, McKinsey and company to develop this strategy, right? It's very simple stuff, and it could make a big positive difference in how players play the game and how they spend money in the game and the ecosystem. And these things are not being done. We had 9 months in Splinterlands where we have very little to show for it from a gameplay perspective. Yeah, we have some new cards or whatever, but we have promo cards and this and that. But I mean, for the number of people playing those cards in the game, it's probably like 100 or 200 that bought promo cards are actually using on Modern and playing them on a daily basis. And that's just not meaningful in the grand scheme of things. So you got to get back to a point where you've got all these people that understand Splinterlands, know Splinterlands, that have left Splinterlands, and you got to give them reasons to come back as at one point, right? You can easily get that community back playing, rebuying assets at, half or a third of the price when they exited, so they feel like they're getting more value, and they come in the game, they're pumped and they're excited, and you're bringing in more players with them. These are things that can be done with the right focus and development on your game. And look, a tutorial where you have a hawk talking about how a melee attack works in the grand scheme of things, I don't care. A new player doesn't care. No one cares, realistically, right? It's not going to do anything.
Maybe because we all figured it out without the tutorial. That's the part that I always go back to.
Even if you 9 months quested, I would laugh at you and say, "Wow, you really have problems with running your company, because that should not take 9 months to do." I'm sorry. Creatively, developmentally, anything wise, it's just. And we'll talk a little bit about this too, because I want to talk about this is because, Matt's, and philosophically, I disagree with this. Matt goes and says, I trust my developers are going to develop on time and as fast as they can, and we'll just let them go off and spin and do their thing. And I will say, if you have really talented developers, which I've had on my teams, very talented developers that I would entrust to do that and say, what it takes to get it done, go do it. I can count the number of those people on my hand, right? The number of people that I would trust to do that. There are reason that there's levels of management and project management and program management in the corporate world, because those things make a difference in efficiency and budgets and stuff like that, and getting stuff out the door. So you're not just consistently burning money. Corporate world works in a fashion that they do it. They don't have managers and project managers because it doesn't add value. They do it because when it comes down to budgets and timelines, these type of people and personnel do make a difference when you have the right people there. If you just let a developer sit behind his keyboard and develop at his own pace, he's not being challenged at all. That's what happened with Varp, right? I'm guessing. I don't know for sure, but they just put him in a room and said, go make this work, and hopefully it works out, and no one's checking anything. No one's, there's no architect or someone, project management to say, you need to be looking at doing this, or why is this taking so long? This should not take this long. You need to rethink how you're doing it. Because if no one challenges you, that's why it takes 3 months for you to review code before you even write any code. Realistically, maybe that's a month, realistically, not 3 months, but because you let your developers do it on their own time frame, it takes 3 months. And so you paid 3 times what you had to pay, and you've got less than you should have gotten. And that type of management is probably why we're in this current position, because again, I mean, it's nice to trust, but you need to verify, you need to have checks and balances, and you need to do industry best practices on these things, because again, you're not agile, and in your history shows you're not agile. So keep doing the things that you've been doing is just going to continue to commit those errors, basically.
Yeah, what I found interesting about that comment you're referring to with Matt talking about, his management style versus what they had done previously. To me, this is a full reversion to Splinterlands pre-2021, right? Where like it was probably just like Matt, Aggie, and Crypt Mancer, and they would just work on stuff, and as soon as it was done, they would get it out. There was no like time frame, there were no project managers. It was a very small, lean company that was, probably overworked and did not have any kind of like organization in terms of, who was managing what. It was just, hey, you work on this, when it's ready to go, you tell me, and vice versa. And now like we're fully there, right? We had the huge run up where Aggie, to his credit, detriment, whatever you want to call it, tried to bring in, agile project management, all that stuff to scale up with the company the way that the company was scaling up. Obviously things didn't go as planned. And now here we are where, as many as possible expenses have come off of the company's books, and they are just highly focused on what's the minimum that needs to get done. Okay, you work on that, we'll work on this, yada, yada, yada from there. So
we've
to
been
me,
hearing cuts have been happening to get down to the bare minimum for the last 6 months.
True.
Months, right?
I mean, with the recent announcement, this is now 3 layoffs in 3 years, right? 22, 23, 24. And I don't know what the extent of this was, but I mean, Crypt Mancer is essentially being laid off DAO, if you think about it. So like this still counts significantly in my opinion. It's just he's such a valuable asset to the team, or at least the team considers him a valuable asset, that they're trying to offload his salary to the DAO, which, I don't know. Land has just become, it's crazy that 15 months ago, or I don't even know, about 15 months ago, 14 months ago, like Aggie was talking about, Land's going to eat up 75% of the cards in the marketplace. I'm just remembering this based on the comment that you made about them not solving the card problem. And I don't know why I always get caught up on this, because I'm just like, I sound like a broken record now, because Conflicts was actually done quite well. Like one of the ways in which I think they could pivot right now, which I know would piss so many people off, is just use Wagons as land.
You saw Max post on that, right? You saw Max post on that, right?
Yeah.
Because that's exactly true. What they did with Wagons, like literally probably in like a month or two,
that should have been land.
That should have been land. And the problem now that they have, the conundrum that they have is, now that they have Wagons in the game and working technically, is after Rebellion, this last airdrop for Rebellion happens, what happens to Wagons, and what kind of utility exists with Wagons? Because they have a system with Wagons now with card staking and stuff that's better than land. And if they give more value to Wagons with card staking and the benefits in game with that, then they basically disenfranchise all of the land holders and players, because they're like, well, why did I buy land and buy this stuff for land, power cores and titles and this and that, when I should just be staking stuff in Wagons and getting more benefits, right? It doesn't make any sense. So the dilemma that they have now is, how do they keep progressing forward with Wagons and value with Wagons without pissing everyone else off that's already here and saying, well, why didn't you do some of this value for land? Because all these landholders, are like saying, why am I staking cards and DEC on land when I'm getting nothing for it?
Yeah.
And that's going to be a problem when realistically you're right, Aftersound. I mean, wagons is probably a better implementation of land, and now you've got a problem because you've promised and sold one thing, and same thing with the whole tactic summoners, right? Tactic summoners are out there, they're not items and spells being generated by players on land, and you kind of open that bottle and release that genie, and now what kind of value do you add to land eventually when you've done all these things in advance?
I think land can still be incredibly valuable because items and spells can be something completely different. Tactics to me was a good move, but the thing is you have to follow it up now, right? We need an item or a spell in the game to add value to that in case people don't have tactic summoners or whatever. It's just the progression just isn't there. Here's the thing. I think they'd be able to solve the card oversupply problem if they ask, and I know we're asking the DAO for money is a touchy subject now, but if they got another, 100 million, 200 million DEs from the DAO and said, hey, starting next year, right, in January or whenever the Hall of Promo things is done, maybe in February or March, if they said, we're going to create some promo cards, right, that are only available through the wagons, and on the wagons you can stake any card in the game, that would eat up a significant amount of these cards trading under burn value. These 30-cent Chaos Legion packs that people are selling, right, probably wouldn't be sold for that much. Just that alone could probably clean up a lot of the excess, but that's a short-term solution because it's not like wagons are going to give out cards forever, right? You have to continue to find utility for wagons, which is yet again, as you like to point out, yet again another thing that they need to provide utility for.
Yeah, it's a difficult thing. I mean, we need to have answers sooner than later. And again, we don't have them. There's no vision. A lot of this stuff is just being done, it seems, by the seat of their pants because they're putting out too many other fires of things that they haven't delivered. And again, like I said, the clock's ticking. This last airdrop hits, I guess, in 2 weeks? I don't know the exact time frame for this last airdrop. But yeah, it's after that last airdrop, they're going to have to say, what are we doing in wagons? Are wagons just, idle at that point? What happens to Rebellion? Do you continue to stake your stuff in your wagons to get value for that? What is it? I mean, who knows? I mean, there's been no clarity. There's been no conversations that I've seen on it, and it's 2 weeks away.
Well, okay. To be fair, when they came out with wagons, they did say this is for conflicts only. We may do something with it in the future, but they're not guaranteeing anything. So I'm not sitting here trying to hold them to hey, you should do something with conflicts because you said so. I don't think they ever said anything. All I'm saying is that this is a better card vacuum than land is at this point.
It absolutely is for Rebellion for sure, as you can see by the Rebellion set price, coupled with obviously the airdrop mechanic. But here's the thing is, if you have this thing that's working in your game, that's adding value, it's going to turn off in 2 weeks. And then what's going to happen to Rebellion cards if they don't renew it or add some other value to it, right? That's going to be what's interesting because it could very much negatively impact the Rebellion set price and stuff if they let it expire and do nothing with it. If they just say, "Oh, we're done with wagons. It was a great run. Now we're just doing nothing again." Again, a good company would have had a strategy and communicated it out and says, hey, guess what? Wagons are going away in 2 weeks, but here's what's coming up with extra wagons. Here's what you're going to want to do with your Rebellion cards and your Chaos Legion cards. And here's how it impacts, landholders because we're tying it into land. We've got none of that. Zero, not a zip.
Yeah.
A good company would be leading with that and saying, this is how you can use and get value. And here's the new benefits that you're going to get by doing this. And here's why you're going to want to buy more wagons and spend DEC. We get none of that. And this is why we're in this tailspin, right? If you look at the chart and pull the chart of SPS, it goes one direction and one direction only. And there's a reason for that because we're not doing these basic things that should be done.
Well, okay. I'm not going to disagree with you on that. I'm a little frustrated now in the sense, somebody bought some SPS for whatever, but there you go, down to the right. Oh God, that looks so ugly. The thing is, I've never really cared about the excess supply of cards. I mean, I know that it is an issue, but maybe I took on the same mentality as the team where it's just like, you got to get new players in to suck up these these extra cards off the marketplace. But in thinking now about the rhetoric that has been put forth, both from previous management and then now, you had, Aggie talking about land since last summer, right? So we're talking 15, 16 months ago. Land is going to eat up 75% of these cards, as I was saying earlier. Then when Matt came on, if you remember a year ago, maybe it was like September of 2023, we had that proposal for a card burning event, which Matt thought was a good idea. And then we actually got, I think, a proposal earlier on this year, which morphed into the halving promo event. So it's just like all these things to try to, like, that the community wanted to use as a way to like eat up extra cards off the marketplace, just never materialized. It never became a focus. And so while that's not something that necessarily bothers me from a inherent standpoint, I understand the frustration. And now looking back on it, I'm just like, oh man, that really sucks. Because so many people left because of that, right? Because asset prices just kept going down and down and down. Mm-hmm. All right, let's catch up on the chat real quick because folks are tuning in. You got Jobby Saints saying, hey, Tails, watch Twitch in bed, YouTube in the morning. Nicola's saying at this rate much faster. I'm assuming the decline of the company. So Video says, the most valuable thing we have is a community, yet we are on Discord and can barely communicate. Develop Hive so we can communicate. Well, Hive is there. You can go communicate. Who among the high whales would even support the blockchain transfer? I think the whales here that has the say on matter. I mean, I don't know. I think it was kind of split. But of course, all the whales sided with Matt as soon as Matt said that he was staying. Which, and I mean, not that I'm a whale, but I immediately shut my case down. Sorry, you were saying something?
I think it's not a transfer or move, right? It's eventually Splinterlands will work on its node software if it gets released and it functions, right, from its SPS validator nodes. What we're talking about is bridging and the ability to have assets function and exist on other chains that could expand. So it's not a one chain only type of thing. It's a multi-chain type of environment, because Splinterlands runs with the stuff that it has kind of on its own servers for the most part, generally speaking. But they have to account for stuff, in the past, like with Rooney and Wax and stuff. And it gets a little dicey, right? Because, anytime something's off chain, technically then it's not necessarily playable in game, because you can't do that real-time lookup and stuff like that in the blockchains and stuff. So there's stuff to work through, but just making the assets available, similar to how parallel assets are available on Base and Ethereum mainnet, right? That causes some issues, confusions and things as well, certainly. But the availability there to have money from Ethereum whales on layer 1 or from people to transfer into Base and get value out of that is beneficial. So it's definitely something that's not exclusive, but something that can add value and still add functionality, right? Yeah, no.
And that's a good point. And the most recent update that I have from Clay, which was not like a private conversation, I think it was in Discord somewhere, but I was asking him what the time frame for us to be able to bridge out to another chain like Solana or L2 like Base, and he's saying that we need validators up before we can do any of that. So I don't know if this is necessarily a company thing. It sounds more like a DAO thing, but because the company has been behind validator development for a very long time, it's become a company thing. And so now at this point, I was hoping that we'd get some kind of bridges built this year, but with where we're at, I don't know that it's going to happen in 2025. And I think even Clay was not confident it was going to happen in 2024 either. All right, Pops Fishing is here. Bolts, what's going on? Nicola says they take their paychecks basically for nothing. They only patch what they screw up. Video says, if SPS goes up, who can afford the staking requirements? I want my rewards and staking requirements to be stable. Hive pays $12,000 per month to maintain HBD. Why not use it? I actually disagree with that. I mean, I think I don't know. I feel like if the rewards go up, people will figure out a way. And the SPS rentals do offer a way for people to get it for relatively cheap until it's not. And then all of a sudden, scarcity drives value.
Yep, different problem at that point.
But a good problem, because you go back
exactly.
to you go back to 2021, and like there were people lining up the door to try to get a Yodin or to try to get whatever, or try to get vouchers for $25. Holy crap. Yeah. So I would say I'd rather have that problem than the other way around.
Absolutely. I look at it, you always have that argument, is it better to have cheap assets or high price stuff? And I say, look, let it work itself out. Go to the opposite end of the spectrum. Let's deal with the problem of high price stuff. Everything's too expensive, and have that problem, because it's a much better problem to have than the problem we've had recently, right? Which is the opposite, which is everything's cheap and falling, right? So token prices falling, asset prices falling. Let's get to the problem where we have things that are too expensive, and then I'm happy to have that conversation with anyone.
Yep, agree. All right, Bolt says they need to start slapping some puzzles or match 3 type of games. This is to attract the opposite gender. Because believe me when I tell you, if we get the right girl streamer on Spin on Lens, whoo. I mean, we had Ali Straza. Is that not enough? Who's that? There's that one chick on X everybody's always like talking to. The boxing chick. Get her to start streaming more. Video says Crypt Mancer has been developing land in Malaysia, clearing the forest to flip it for resale. He posted that on Discord recently. So that's his physical land. Bananas land probably would have eaten up a lot more cards if it didn't cost 50k DEC for each plot, plus the cards. Do you agree with that? How much do you think they should have done for land?
Well, it has to be commensurate with the value that you're getting out of land. And what they launched with land 1.5, which we have now, is the SPS pool is just not giving enough value in SPS to warrant that type of pricing. And because research has no value currently right now, and the grain has basically no value because it's not being used for anything.
Most people are grain neutral. Yeah,
and there's no one's going out and buying tons of grain right now because they need it. If they're buying it, they're speculating on it, right? Because it's so low and whatever. But because there's no, again, it goes back to your game loops and your game design. If you're charging $50 for something and you're giving away 10 cents a year, you'd be a fool to put $50 into that vehicle and lock it in there, because you're never going to ROI on that. You'd be better off just putting in a savings account and generating 0.01% interest, right? So again, you have to generate the game loops to make it worthwhile, so the cost makes it such that the value in the game or otherwise that you're getting in-game benefits like soulbound benefits or gameplay benefits or token benefits is such where it makes sense for you to spend that. And it's obviously the lever is way in the other direction right now because all the asset prices and token prices are down, and it's just a bad scenario. I mean, people are not going to jump in and utilize land anytime soon right now.
Now let me ask you this: despite the delay and potential having to wait until next year for 1.75, what do you think of 1.75 now that we've gotten a better look at what it'll be? Do you think it can actually move the needle in terms of just creating a lot of volume back and forth and forcing people to be specialists versus generalists?
I mean, from what I've seen, again, there's still no value there.
There's still no utility for research, right?
Yeah, I mean, so you shut off my grain producing stuff and I need to trade to get grain, my stone or my ore, my wood or whatever. But for what? For what reason? Why do I care? I'll just take everything off land and not produce anything, so I don't need to buy grain or trade grain, because what value does that give me? If I produce stone, what can I do with the stone? I mean, what is that? You're just shuffling decks around the Titanic. It means nothing. There needs to be some game benefits or monetary benefits for me or any player in land to want to do those things. And if you just put game stuff to put it in there has to be a reason. There has to be I mean, as a player, you have to want to do that. Why do I want to, if you cut off my land from producing grain and I produce stone, what reason do I have to continue to produce stone in 1.75?
Yeah.
If you're telling me I got to wait till 2.0, which is 2 years away or a year away, I'm not going to produce that stone. I'm not going to pay to buy grain to produce stone. Yes, some people will. The diehard maxis who are farming research right now will do that and hope something happens in the future. But honestly, you might as well be better off investing in penny stocks, because the game may not be around in 6 months for your research to matter. So again, it's all about positive EV and outlook. And these are not reassuring things right now.
Yeah, I mean, the only in-game benefit is the title boost on rewards. So I feel like there's 7 people that are farming research at this point. There's only there's only a need for that. Wagons, that is right. Work with what you have already, says Bolts. Video says, imagine if decisions were made democratically within the DAO. SPL is an amazing game, but the balance cannot be found without communication, better decisions. Just keep Wagons for the next set, says Onk12. Bolt says that Yabamat still has pocket aces. It's just waiting for the right time. God, I mean, I hope you're right. I don't know when the right time would be, though. Highblog is not a good way to communicate. That's fair. We'll experience some incoming heavy turbulence regarding what Web3 game you play. And today, pick a team who you believe in. I'm rolling with Yabamat. I mean, I'm not selling my Splolands assets, but I've been very clear about the fact that I'm not throwing a bunch into here either. Just letting it all roll over and see where things go. Can we pivot to Parallel now? I want to talk about the bonds a little bit.
We need to get you into a bond program, and personally, I've been very happy with the bond program. I mean, I don't get anything. They've just been very friendly and very accommodating, and they're helping the community learn to play Parallel. It's the Paragons DAO, and they've been like, I've had very little.
I'm actually in their Discord,
them.
So it's that's pretty cool.
They're very cool. I mean, like I said, I've just been very passively just kind of listening and partaking, but whether you do a Paragons DAO or you do any of the other bond programs out there, again, the ability for you to get access to meta cards in Parallel at no cost. You don't have to pay like a rental cost or do anything. You join a bond, which is basically a guild or an alliance that has assets accumulated and present from the game collected. And every 7 days, you request cards that you would like to play with for that next 7-day period. They delegate those to your account to play and earn with, and you get to rank up, play and earn, and basically instead of renting and paying money out of your own pocket to do that, they make it easy in that I think they take 10% like a rake off your earnings in Prime for the DAO or the bond, and they take like 5% for the Parallel Echelon fund that provides infrastructure. So basically, and I don't know exactly those percentages right, but I believe it's like 15% total. So let's say, let me translate it to Splinterlands terms. If someone gave you a champion modern deck, like all the rebellion cards that you would need to win, and they said you can have it for free, just join our alliance, we'll delegate the cards to you, and we'll take 15% of the SPS that you earn, and that's all you have to pay. You don't have to pay anything up front. You just, like, if you earn 30 SPS in a win for champion modern, we'll take 4.5 SPS a win. It's the same thing that Xbot and Archmage does basically, but they don't give you the assets. They just give you the programming, right? What these bonds
you know who was doing this before they left? Nifty Arcade.
Sure.
And this is why I wish their program was still around. But it's a great idea.
It's huge because it's frictionless. As a new player coming into Parallel, I could sign up today on Parallel. I could join a bond.
So where do you do the bonds? Is it on the Parallel website itself, or do you have to go to Paragon's DAO website?
There's a bond page. Let me see if I can find it. I'll post it here in Discord, and you can maybe navigate to it and show. I think it's linkable off the Echelon. Let me see how the computer.
Let me go to. Is it on Echelon or the Parallel?
It's on, I think, the Echelon website, because it's the Echelon Foundation that provides infrastructure for it.
Okay, I've been looking through the Parallel stuff, so let me go.
But the takeaway is you could sign up for Parallel as a new player today, join a bond instantly, basically. And if they accept you in the bond, you could request assets, all digital NFT assets for earning, and you could start ranking up and earning with those assets. Day one at no cost. There's no friction. There's no cost. And it gets you playing meta competitively in the game, earning right away. And it gives the benefit to those people that own the assets in the bond, basically passive earning potential. For their excess assets to just earn on the side. So it's kind of like the best of the Splinterlands rental market and delegation built into like a guild structure, right? Where the Paragon's DAO or the bond that you're part of wants you good players. They want like essentially good players earning the highest amount they can earn, so they get a portion of that. and they want to train the players. They want to make you get better at the game. They give coaching, they give sponsor tournaments, they give stuff
This is
to the
kind of like
community.
scholarships on steroids, because you
Yeah.
really like, there's the potential to earn is significant at the top.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in, let's say, Diamond in parallel with let's say, just delegated assets from a bond, I mean, you're probably making, even with Prime down to like $10 a token, you're probably making, like, I'm guessing somewhere between $3 to $5 a day on that at no cost to you, if you can play at that level. So it's yeah. I mean, if you can make $3 to $5 a day at no cost, that seems like a good game to play in my mind.
Yeah. I mean, that's significant, especially now. And imagine what happens if that starts to go up over time.
And we talked about this on your channel recently, After Sound. We talked about starter decks and the cost to get a Chaos Legion deck versus a Rebellion deck at $6,000. There's not an easy way to rent a full Rebellion deck to play like a Champion Modern and stuff like that. There's other games that are innovating and doing these things for their community and player base, that you can get into the game and not have to jump through all these hoops and plop down $6,000 in a game that you may not be playing next week, right? So, that's how, again, you get stickiness. You get users playing the game. You make it easy for them. You show them the path. You get them better. You get them invested. These are all things that, good projects will do.
Yeah. Okay. So I can't log into this site because I forgot the password on my wallet. So I'm going to have to reinstall my wallet. But here I can show the website. So it's on here. Is this the Prime Foundation?
Yeah. It basically has a bond thing where you can apply for a bond. They give you all the details and stuff. You do need to sign in with your parallel account to authenticate before you can do that, though. But yeah.
Oh, okay. So it's not one of these. Words Connect Wallet.
It's sanctuary.online is the website. It's not the Echelon Prime. So sorry.
Gotcha. No, you're good. Okay. Sanctuary. That's their marketplace.
Mm-hmm. So if you go to sanctuary.online, it's under the bonds area there. I don't know if you pull that up.
Yeah, give me a second. It's coming shortly. So here's what I'm looking at now.
I don't think it's sharing on stream though.
Yeah, no, it should be now. So bonds down here.
Yeah, there it is.
Forge your alliances, conquer. So you have to find someone specifically. You can't just go in, and it's not like a rental thing where like, hey, this is available and I can apply for it. You'd have to actually find someone that's willing to delegate it to you.
Yeah, you'd have to join basically a guild here. Basically, I think there's 6 bonds to start with initially that they've basically whitelisted for the program. There will be more in the future.
What do you mean by 6 bonds? They can delegate 6 cards to you at a time?
6 basically guilds, basically. Paragons guilds is one. There's Exile, Contagion, Devmons, Emissaries, and Midnighters. You can see each of them. If you go to, I think you're maybe, if you go to sanctuary.online/bonds/all, that'll give you the list of all the bonds that are out there, and it'll show you the number of members. So it'll show you, for example, Paragon's Alliance has 125 basically scholars or members in their program. Exile has 108, stuff like that.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so which one are you a part of? Is it the
part of Paragon Alliance?
Okay.
They've been
that's just the Paragon's DAO.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they've been very supportive and very helpful. Again, like I requested a Cathari deck for this week, and it's been doing really well. And I basically, I didn't have a lot of time, so I just kind of put in a generic deck where I needed a couple cards to supplement my own deck. So I'm only using probably, I think I've only asked for like maybe 10 or 12 cards for this week. But those 10 or 12 cards are cards that are very expensive that I wouldn't have access to otherwise. And they're helping me win at league levels that I couldn't get to otherwise. So yeah, it's pretty powerful.
Interesting. You know what I see everybody complaining about on X these days is the Catherine deck. Feels like they're facing it all the time.
Which is interesting because I think they just had their tournament this weekend, and I think Shroud dominated the tournament.
Of course.
So the meta changes. And the Catherine deck is very powerful. I will say I played that deck last weekend using Paragon assets, and because I only had access to like one Catherine's Rally Cry, I really struggled to use that deck. It really is. It's kind of like dependent on the fleet support relics and the Catherine's Rally Cry card. Without those, it really falls short in being able to compete at the higher levels of the game. So what I'll say is what I've learned with Parallel is there's different metas at different league levels. Like certain decks and certain compositions and certain paragons will take you so far, and then it'll kind of like top out. It'll cap out where you start running into stuff at that level where you can't win anymore, and you have to pivot and do something different. So they kind of, just like in Splinterlands, how when they had league caps, you'd have like silver metas and bronze metas, different cards and combinations based on the abilities and stuff that were available at those levels, kind of dominated. And Parallel, what happens is as you get to the higher leagues, people have more availability and access to different card combinations and rarities and types. So at certain levels, the counters exist for certain metas and decks that wouldn't exist at lower levels because people wouldn't have access to those counters and stuff, if that makes sense. So your deck lists kind of scale based on kind of where you compete. And that's why the meta shifts a lot, because if people go and start running a lot of Cathy, people then start going to a lot of relic removal and countering that with other things, where if they play that deck, then all of a sudden you just automatically lose pretty much. So yeah, it's very complicated. I would say the complexity in this game is such where, even though it's a newer game and there's like only like 2 sets released for it, there's a lot of levels of complexity here for strategy and stuff that is good, I think, as a TCG player that you want to see.
Well, yeah, you want a wide sprawling meta. You don't want one deck or one parallel just dominating everything. But to your point, like, look at Catherine's Rally Cry. You can grab this on base for $60. That's a heck of an investment.
Yeah, and you'd want to have 3 of those in your deck if you ran that fleet support deck. Pretty much mandatory to have 3 of them. And that's the max you could have in a deck, is 3 of the same non-legendary card. But that's $180 right there. And then again, that's where something like a bond comes into play, because you can get access to that card for free, and you don't have to invest $180 a week or whatever, or $180 one time to buy that. So
I was just looking at the FAQ here. So here's the fees. It looks like it's 25%. So 5% of the Echelon sync schedule, which is actually pretty cool, because that's their, like, goes back into their, I don't know, whatever that is, distribution. 10% net to the bond, and then 10% to the lenders.
Okay, yeah. And honestly,
by the way, you're still getting it for free, right? So you're making 75% of rewards that you wouldn't normally get.
Exactly. And what happens when you jump up a league in Parallel is basically your earnings essentially double. So like if you were playing in Gold League with a starter deck, let's just say as an example, by going into the next league, which I guess would be Platinum, you're getting double the earnings. But if you're only paying 25% of those earnings and your earnings are doubling, it's a net benefit to you as a player to do that, right? To participate in a bond, if that bond can help you get to the next level or higher in the game, which these bonds can, because they have literally all these legendary assets. Plus, here's another cool thing that's nice about it is, I can go in and I can request perfect loop cards and special edition cards. So I'm playing with bling on when I'm playing the game, which is nice because it feels good to play with these expensive assets, even though I don't own them. When I drop down like a perfect loop, black market fixer, it's cool because of the animation, the graphics and stuff, and it feels good. It's a feel good moment in the game, because if I were to buy that card myself, it'd be like a couple $100, which I'm not going to buy, and it looks good, so it's nice.
But you get to have that kind of alluring game, and it's fun.
Yeah,
I get it. Cool, man. All right, well, I need to get myself into one of these things, but before that, I probably should start playing regularly again. and then be able to jump into one of these DAOs, or not DAOs, but one of these bonds.
Yeah, I definitely recommend it. I mean, like I said, I mean, there's plenty to choose from. There's no cost other than, like I said, they'll take a cut of your earnings if you're, using assets actively from them, which you probably should if you're joining a bond. But I haven't been playing super regularly. I've just been doing enough to get my battle pass cleared out and stuff. But I anticipate to play more because, like I said, I'm having fun playing the game because I'm using cards that I wouldn't normally have access to otherwise. And like I said, you can change it every week. Like, if you don't want to play Kathy like Marcolian 1 week, like I switch it to Cathari this week. And, next week I'll probably switch to Augencore, just mix it up and try different cards and decks out.
That actually is kind of fun because then you can play with like elite level cards in every parallel, see what you like, see what you don't like. And then even if you're not even trying to be competitive, it's just fun to add a little variety to the game. Because I will say this, going back to Splinterlands for a second, but one thing that I do appreciate about Splinterlands is that every battle is something different. And I remember Matt talking about how, he used to play Magic the Gathering and all that. And he's like, what if every time you play the game, something was slightly different? And every time I hear people complaining about that on X, right, like running into the same deck over and over again, I'm like, oh, this is kind of the same thing that I used to run into playing physical Magic the Gathering cards, right? So being able to jump in with different decks without having to buy everything. Like even for me, I only bought the Marcolian starter deck, and I probably will end up buying the other ones at some point. I know I keep saying that, but if I have a chance to try it first, see which cards I actually like, see which parallels I like, and then start building from there, that'd probably make a lot more sense.
For sure. Like I'll give you an example. Like next week I've got queued up. I'm set to borrow the Memento of the Fallen, which is like a legendary like upgrade for Augencore. And it's kind of it's an interesting mechanic in what it does for Augencore, but the card itself, like when I checked to buy it like a couple of months ago, was like $600, right? So I'm never going to buy it normally, but if I can borrow it and try and play with it and learn how it works, not only is it good for me as a player because now I can play that deck in the future, but when I come against that deck, I know how it functions and I know how to counter it, right? Because I've played using it. So I think that's interesting too, because now you can certainly do that if you had the soulbound version of Memento of the Fallen. I don't have it, and for me to craft it, it would take a bunch of scrap basically to do so, and I don't use it all the time.
You can craft cards?
Yeah. Yeah, like here's an example. Like I just looked at my parallel because I've been doing the battle pass and stuff. I mean, I have like I in the last I think month and a half, I have an extra 935 copies of cards, soulbound cards that I've gotten just by playing the game, excess cards that I have duplicates of that are basically I can burn for scrap and craft my own cards with. Soulbound copies of it, right? But Echoes are the NFT versions of those where you pay Prime to craft those. But yeah, I mean, they're giving away these cards and stuff at a rate where you can get duplicates and burn them and create your own cards to play with. But again, it's one of those things where you don't want to spend a bunch of scrap on a legendary card. You try it out, you don't like it, and you never use it again, right? Because you only have limited scrap, right? So you want to, again, it's kind of like try stuff, find stuff you like, find metas that you like playing and stuff, and then you can then either buy the card or do whatever later in the future, and you're not kind of out that money without trying it, basically.
No, in fact, you're not out anything. You're just out some time, and you probably made some money from it, if anything, which is kind of cool. All right, dude, thanks for walking me through that. I think we're going to wrap up here because it's starting to get a little bit later in the evening, but any final thoughts? It can be about anything. It doesn't need to be parallel or Splinterlands, but
no, I appreciate the time coming on, just chatting. I think it was good, to catch up, talk about Web3 stuff, whether it's Splinterlands or whatever's out there that people are playing. I think it's, one of the things that I think we can do as, I guess content creators in the Web3 space is just share our experiences. Like a lot of the stuff I post on X and stuff is talking about, what I'm seeing, what I'm learning, what I'm hearing, and just kind of spreading the information and making people aware of what's out there. Now, whether you choose to do anything with that, ignore it or whatever, that's up to you, but at least you have the information.
True.
I think that's one of the values that we can provide is to say, hey, this is stuff that's out there, if it interests you, look into it. If not, ignore it, right? But at least you were made aware of it. And again, one of the things that I look at, and I always rib Steve about this a little bit. I was like, Steve, why didn't you tell me about it wasn't Farmville. It was whatever the Gala Games thing was. I forget what it's called. It was the Farmville type simulator, whatever, where he made hundreds of thousands of dollars playing that game. Like, Steve, why didn't you ever tell me about it? I would have got in and played that game. And that's the thing is sharing that information. It's good to share it if you know it, and I think that's one of the services that we can provide. So.
No, absolutely. Well, I still want to jump into Illuvium. Like I said, it's been sitting on my PC for a minute, so I'll probably end up giving that a shot at some point in the near future here.
Sure.
All right, let's see. Rent to own. Any other chats here? Observations, finally some parallel stuff. Yeah, curious to hear how your parallel journeys are going. Anybody else that's playing? Bolt says I'd rather learn how to play Hearthstone, even if I don't earn anything. That's fair too. I mean, Web2 still has a place. But Tails, this was super fun, man. Thanks for hopping in, guys. Make sure you go check out Tails. I put his X and YouTube links in the description below. He's always got fantastic content. So, Tails, man, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for chatting. It's good catching up.
Absolutely. All right, let me end the stream and then I'll chat with you afterwards.